right, so I think it is time for us to start our webinar. Welcome everyone to this SATI webinar on interpreting technology and the question of what is available and can it work. I'm just trying to quickly see if I can live stream to Facebook. It seems that there is a problem that I cannot live stream. So I beg your indulgence just for a second, just to see what the problem is. Somehow this doesn't seem to work. I get all sorts of error messages, and this is the first time this has happened. So I'm not entirely sure why this is happening, which is a pity. My name is Eleanor Cornelius, and I am currently the chairperson of the South African Translators Institute. It is my pleasure to welcome our presenter today, Elizabeth Deysel, who is currently employed at the National Parliament in Cape Town in South Africa as a permanently employed interpreter. She has been working at the Parliament for about 6 years. Before that, she was a trainer and lecturer at the University of the Free State, where she trained interpreters. After that, she worked at the University of Stellenbosch as an educational interpreter. And I think the meaning in South Africa of what an educational interpreter is a little bit different to what we find overseas. In South Africa, we are very multilingual. We've got 11 official languages, and universities have a choice when they select the languages in their language policies. So often lectures are being simultaneously interpreted in different languages. And we have quite an elaborate system that we call educational interpreting. It has nothing to do with sign language interpreting. Elizabeth is currently pursuing her PhD on the topic of interpreting technology. And she told me that she likes gadgets and all things technology. And she is, of course, in particular, very interested in interpreting technology. So without further ado, Elizabeth, I hand over to you. Just one house rule: we will not be able to entertain verbal questions. So after the presentation, you are welcome to write your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. Please don't use the chat area, but use the Q&A area at the bottom of the screen. And I will put those questions to Elizabeth after her presentation. You are welcome to start typing your questions as she presents, but of course it's quite possible that she may answer something later on in the presentation that you were planning to ask her. So maybe towards the end of her presentation, you can start typing your questions and I will put them to Elizabeth. She will present for about 40 to 45 minutes, after which the Q&A part of this presentation will start. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for this honor, this wonderful opportunity. How extremely wonderful it is to have this opportunity today where everybody can tune in from wherever you are and listen to me where I'm seated in the comfort of my own home here in Cape Town, South Africa. So without further ado, I'm very excited about this webinar. It's like Eleanor said, I am a gadget girl, as you can say, and I like technology. So of course, being an interpreter myself, I'm very intrigued by technology and how it can assist interpreters. So I hope all of you have a nice cup of tea or coffee, because for the next 40 minutes you will be listening to me and my presentation. But every now and again we will also pull up a poll. We will be asking you some questions. So I just want to share my screen for the presentation and then we can jump in. Okay, so I think the most of us, we are quite familiar with CAT tools, computer-assisted translation tools, WordFast, Trados, and how it can assist translators in the job they do and increase their performance. So in a way, translation has been ahead of interpreting when it comes to technology, not only with the development of technological tools, but also with the adoption of the technology. It seems that from interpreters, research has shown that we are a bit hesitant to use technology or include it in our work. So this might be because our work is oral, or we feel like we don't really need technology to do our work, where translators really needed to adapt and use technology in their day-to-day life. But I want to show you that technology can actually support us in our work, and we don't need to see it as a threat or something extra. So I think when I want to talk about this, some interpreters have been a bit skeptical. An expert in the field, Professor Barry Olson from the USA, he writes a column, The Tech Savvy Interpreter. And after he started writing the column, an interpreter asked him, "Why are you doing this? Interpreters don't care about technology. We want to go to the booth, do our work, and then go home. We are not really bothered with technology." But research has shown that we as interpreters, we need to research, we need to investigate, we need to build our own knowledge about what is available. We need to test it, and then we can provide our own criticism about how it can be improved. Does it work? Can it work? Will it work? And how we can improve it to be a good fit for the interpreter. So first, I'm going to jump into a little bit of history. So I think most of us, we know that interpreting dates back to ancient Egypt, where it was mostly slaves working as interpreters. And then the professionalization came with the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. And then the team of skilled professionals who were working at the League of Nations of Interpreters. Then some experimentation came, and you can see the picture here, where they mentioned the glass box and the introduction of some new technology. Of course, back then, interpreters who were doing consecutive interpreting mostly, and a little bit of simultaneous, but mainly chuchotage, they were very skeptical, and they were saying, this cannot work, this will never work, we don't want this. Unfortunately, also, some of the interpreters felt that they liked the prestige of being on stage and being right next to the delegates, the very important delegates. And now they're being moved to this glass box where they will only be the voice in someone's ear. But then, of course, we know after World War II, we had the Nuremberg trials in 1945, where simultaneous interpreting really came of age. And this marked a turning point in interpreting, since this was the first time that large-scale use of simultaneous interpreting was introduced to the world. And this laid the foundation for modern-day conference interpreting, where with the help of the technology, as you can see in the picture, interpreters were able to listen to the original speech via the headphones and interpret simultaneously into the microphone, which was broadcasting the interpreted message to the listeners. So of course, we take it back to the South African context. And as we know, we had the TRC in 1996 to 1998. So if you take a look at the picture, at the top right-hand side, you can see the booths that were set up. And these were some of the very first trained interpreters here in South Africa. In 1992, the then University of the Orange Free State, under the leadership of Professor Theo du Plessis, established the Language Facilitation Program. And in 1996, the TRC approached him to say that they need to provide interpreting services. So then they had a team of about 20 interpreters who they then trained, and then they were interpreting at the TRC. So we can see that interpreting and technology is actually intertwined, and it goes back quite a bit. If we move on and we take a look at the World Wide Web, which went public in 1991, the internet and globalization that came with it, and all of a sudden you have access to colleagues across the globe on the other side of the world and with email. But I think back to 2010. 2010 was a big year in terms of computer-assisted interpreting technology, the term CAI. And in 2010, a PhD was published by Diana Berber-Irabin, where she did her research on the use of ICT by interpreters. And already there, she found that some interpreters are a bit skeptical in the use thereof, especially when compared with translators. For myself, I also remember back in 2010, I was still a student assistant. And at the University of the Free State, we hosted an international seminar or international conference. And we had 2 French interpreters. And I remember I was assisting them with their setup. And we were using whispered interpreting equipment with a handheld mic. And that was one of the biggest problems we had, since they said there's no way they can hold their microphones. They need to be hands-free because they need to type on their laptops and their computers. And I was astonished, thinking, but you're busy interpreting, how can you use the technology? And that was just a big turning point, and it completely opened my eyes. And then I started looking into interpreting technologies. And we can see for the past decade, from 2010 to 2020, we have dedicated software and apps that have been developed for interpreters. And we are also looking at technology that was not developed for interpreters, but that interpreters are using. Then I want to come to the very last point, where we are now at this point in time with the COVID-19 pandemic, which we saw the rise of remote simultaneous interpreting, and where we all had to shift to working online. And I actually want to quote Barry Olson again, where he sort of draw this parallel between the rise of simultaneous interpreting with the Nuremberg trials and the rise of remote simultaneous interpreting with COVID-19. Interpreters were very skeptical. They were hesitant to try it before. But then in both instances, we have this world life-changing event. And the technology is already there, but a need is created, and then interpreters need to adapt. So when I talk about technology and interpreting, we can mainly put it in 3 different categories. The first category that I will be talking about is technology for the rendering of an interpreting service, where it can change the way you are rendering a service, for example, remote interpreting. The second one is technology that's there to support the interpreter while they are interpreting. The third category, you will see it's not in my presentation, that's technology to replace the interpreter, artificial intelligence. And I think all of us working with languages, translators, interpreters, I think IT technicians can try as they might, but artificial intelligence will never come close to the work we do. They can bring about wonderful software that we can use to assist us, but it will never be as good as a human interpreter. So I want to jump into technology for the rendering of a service. We can see this is ICT tools and software surrounding the interpreting setting or the delivery and mode, and it influences the conditions in which interpreting is performed. So the very first one here is remote interpreting. And here I spoke about remote simultaneous interpreting, RSI. And remote interpreting takes place when a virtual setting, such as a meeting, for example, gains access to the interpreter who works from a different location to that of the primary participants in the meeting. So this can be a different room, a building, or even a city. In short, it will mean that the interpreter is not physically present in the location where the meeting takes place. The interpreter is connected via a video conference link, and they gain access via the computer display, and they use their headphones and a built-in microphone. The term video remote interpreting, VRI, is mostly for sign language interpreters. And then RSI, remote simultaneous interpreting, for spoken language. The reason being that we are connected via a video conference link, but we don't need our video to be able to do our interpreting. We just need the voice. So I think before I continue, I want to pull up our very first poll that we have, the first poll question. And the question that I want to ask you, have you interpreted on a RSI platform? So if we can pull that up, please. So right now you can just click there, yes or no. Have you interpreted on a RSI platform, for example, on Zoom or any of the other software? And then as soon as I think by the end of the presentation, or as soon as the results become available, you will be able to see it as well. Okay, so you can still continue with the poll. I am going to continue. So you can see I shared a couple of the remote simultaneous interpreting platforms, and then I added Zoom. Of course, we know Zoom was a conference app, and then with the use that was increased in this year, luckily it had an interpretation function and gained a lot of good access with that. So now I just want to see. Here on the screen, I've got a couple of remote interpreting applications. As you can see, we have quite a bit of them. We've got a specific one for sign language, sign video, which is quite good. I know Boost Lingo, Interprify is also excellent. So these were actually invented or created even before this year. Then what I also want to share, something that happened in this year, is the remote simultaneous interpreting hubs that were created. Now for myself and maybe my colleagues at Parliament, this is not going to be something new, because in Parliament we actually do remote interpreting. We don't have access to the National Assembly, they didn't have enough space, so our booths are located in a different building on a different floor, and we have access via video. So one of the interpreters on Twitter shared the map, the remote interpreting hub map, where they currently had 88 hubs that were created worldwide. And you can see after he shared it, it already became 89. So what this would look like, you can see obviously instead of you interpreting at home, you go into the hub where a booth has been set up for you and you have access via the screen. So then you may ask, why would you do this? When you're interpreting at home, you are quite isolated and there's also lack of a technician. So what happens at these hubs, you have an on-site technician who's able to assist with any technological glitches. You also have your booth mate with you. So you can continue as you want to, and your booth mate will be there. If you are at home, like I mentioned, you're very isolated. You don't have that on-site technician. You also have a lack of control over any noise that may happen. And it's also difficult to switch when you need to switch in turn taking with your booth mate. There's just another example. So I just quickly want to show you the demo. This is how I've been interpreting on Zoom. So as you can see, that's my setup on my desk. We are using the Plantronic headphones, which are amazing because they've got acoustic shock protection, which is very important for interpreters. And then it's very comfortable. The microphone is very clear. And then I'm using a MacBook Pro. The battery life is excellent, and also the multitasking. As you can see in the picture, I have Zoom I've minimized, and then on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, I've got different screens that I'm using. So what's amazing with Zoom is the setup for interpretation is done by the host, and the link is sent to the interpreter. So you as the interpreter, you just need to show up. You don't really need to do much. For the Zoom interpretation setup, when they started initially, they had only on the left-hand side these 9 languages which they supported. So what we at Parliament did, we just used those languages, and then we would explain what language would be which. And it was about a couple of weeks ago when Zoom finally realized there's a need and a greater demand for more languages. So now you are able to customize and add your own language. That's up to a maximum of 5 languages that you can customize and add on. So like I said, this is what it would look like for the participants. They will see, like on the Zoom screen below, they will see this button, which is the interpretation function. And then when they click on it, they will be able to select the languages that are available. For you as the interpreter signing on, this is the screen you will get when you sign on. So instead of being a participant, you are signed on as an interpreter. And you are signed as an interpreter, you accept. And then this is the screen you will see. This was a sitting in Parliament. So here on the right-hand side, you can see I was assigned the Afrikaans interpreter, and then in brackets interpreter. And then in the gray block, you can see I was on the English channel. And then how I knew I was the interpreter, right there, that was my language option. Unfortunately, because I was assigned as an interpreter, and whenever you are assigned as an interpreter on Zoom, you don't have the functionalities of a participant. So you have no access to interpretation. You cannot listen to your fellow interpreters interpret. So there's no relay possibilities. The switch with you and your booth partner is also not possible because you can't listen to them. So also you won't know if the Zoom functionality of the interpretation function is working because you were assigned as the interpreter. So I wanted to show you my screen. I like to minimize the Zoom. So it's up there on the right-hand side. And for this specific day, on the right-hand side, I had my speakers list. And on the left-hand side, that's something that we're going to come to a bit later. That's Interpret Bank, where I have my online glossary that I created and managed. So whenever I need to go to Zoom, the switch is very easy. And then I just unmute myself. A shortcut is the space bar if it's a very short interpretation, or you just click on the button and the interpreting works very, very good. I just want to show you an example of the sign language interpreters on Zoom. This is a colleague of mine, Trudy Tennyson, who interprets for the ANC in Parliament. And then on this specific day, this is where she was interpreting. So the deaf people who want to listen to her, they pin her video onto the screen and they have access. The second thing I want to take a look at is console applications. So what's interesting about this is you have a conference, and instead of taking along all the equipment, you leave it at home. You just need a computer and a Wi-Fi network. So the interpreters set up the interpretation network via a computer and the Wi-Fi, and the conference participants download the app Linguali onto their phones, their smartphones, and they can use their own phones to access the interpretation. This is very cost effective. It's very hygienic because people are using their own things, and it doesn't need to be protected and monitored. People are using their own gadgets. I just want to show you a quick clip of where they were using it. Just want to forward a little. So you download the app onto your phone, and then you use your own headphones as well. And the interpreters, of course, they have a booth that have been set up. That's one thing that is needed. But it's very convenient, and people really love this. Now, the third thing I want to come to, and you might ask, why am I doing this under technology for the delivery of interpreting? This is the Smart Pen. So the Smart Pen actually gives rise to something, a hybrid interpreting mode called SymConsec, simultaneous consecutive interpreting. So here you see a picture. This is what it looks like. And right here, the picture is of the Smart Pen, the LiveScribe Echo Smart Pen. So what you can see, the book here, it's like normal paper. When you write on it, it feels like normal paper. The pen is also a ballpoint pen, which feels like writing on normal paper. But what's different here is the pen has a built-in audio recorder, and you can attach your headphones here. Then it's dot paper technology. So you can see at the bottom, they've got a record function, a pause function, a stop function. What's amazing here is as you take notes, it can be paired with your computer or your iPad or your phone. And then you can even convert it into typed text. But what's amazing is you take your notes as you would normally do with consecutive. But when it's your turn to interpret, you just click on the word And whatever you were recording at that very specific moment will be played back into your ear. So you are doing simultaneous consecutive interpreting. I have a little demo here, which I can show you. I'm just going to go on to where he's using the functionality. So here you can see on the right-hand side, that's where he's writing, and it looks like normal pen and paper. And then on the left-hand side, there is a bit of a glare on the screen, but as he's writing, you can see it's paired with his phone. And he's continuing with his note-taking. I think when he gets towards the end of the page, he's going to stop. Let's just wait. Right, so he reaches the end of the page, and then he's going to click on the stop button. So it stops the audio recording. And then it takes a couple of minutes just to pair with your phone, but you can immediately start interpreting. And then you can click on the word where you want to start interpreting. And when you click on that word, what you were recording will play back in your ear. So that was that for technology and the rendering of a service. We're going to move on to technology which supports the interpreter. So this type of technology was designed to support the interpreter during the different sub-processes. That's pre-interpreting with your preparation, during interpreting, or post-interpreting. And this is what we call CAI, or computer-assisted interpreting tools. So the first one I'm going to do is tablet interpreting. But before we get to that, it's time for the second question in our poll. And the question is, do you own a tablet? So this can be any tablet. It can be an iPad. This can be, oh, here we have our results from the previous poll. Have you interpreted on an RSI platform before? We can see it's about even. So we have 47% of our participants indicating yes, and then 53% indicating no. They haven't interpreted on an RSI platform before. So I think we're going to go back to the second question of our poll. Do you own a tablet? So like I mentioned, this can be any tablet. It can be your iPad, it can be an Android device, a Microsoft tablet. Just indicate, do you own a tablet? Yes or no. Okay, so let's go into tablet interpreting. The video I quickly, here we have our results. Do you own a tablet? 64% of us, yes, you own a tablet. 33% of you, no, you don't own a tablet. Just going to close this. So the first video I want to share with you, it's by A Word in Your Ear, that's the blog. And the interpreter in the shot is Alexander Deysel. And he's just showing us how things and how technology has changed through the years with interpreting. Right. So I always enjoy that video so much. 10 years ago, here you come with all your dictionaries, taking up all the space in the booth. Of course, we know when you page through those pages, it can be very irritating to your fellow partner who's busy interpreting at that moment. Then we moved on to laptops, but then we need to bring the chargers, we need an electrical power source, and now we've got the tablet. Very nice and compact. So why would we want to use this technology? What's the advantage here? Of course, a tablet is lightweight. It has internet connectivity. You have access to all your materials online electronically. It's an unlimited pen and paper source. You can customize the paper and the pen. You've got cloud backup, multitasking. It looks very professional and it's environmentally friendly because you're going completely paperless. Also, it's quieter than pen and paper. You don't have that writing or paging through. Of course, we do have some disadvantages. It doesn't have an unlimited battery life. And this is one of the big things interpreters fear. The battery is going to run out. I might not have access to internet. The technology can let you down and it can crash and freeze. But I think as soon as we test it, it's just like with Zoom using it now. As soon as you start using it more and you test it, you build that relationship with trust. Then note taking on a tablet, it's not as precise as writing on pen and paper, and the scrolling can be a little bit difficult. But if we take a look at the note taking apps, these are specific apps for the iPad. You have Notability, and it's about 30 Rand. Good Notes, it's 130 Rand, but this also has the feature of recording as you take notes. And it has endless possibilities. But I like Evernote, Penultimate. It's available for free on your iPad. The iPad I'm using, it's 10 years old and it's still in a very good working condition. So that's why I'm quite a fan of the iPad. Here you can see on the screen, I just have this contrast. On your right, you've got good old pen and paper with note taking. And then on your left, you've got your screen on your tablet with the stylus, which is the pen we use on the tablets. So now I want to come to the third question in our poll. Do you prefer good old-fashioned pen and paper or electronic note-taking? Which one would you prefer? Okay, I'm going to give a little bit more time. Just to show you, this is in Penultimate. I can create different notebooks. So these are some of the notebooks I've created for specific events. And then in that notebook, you've got certain of the pages. Then this is what I meant with you can customize your page. You can choose exactly what you want, dotted paper, lined paper, how wide it needs to be. And the same with your pen, the color of your pen. Do you want to use a pencil? So this is just a screenshot. This is my iPad, the one that's more than 10 years old. I want to share some of the results with you. Do you prefer good old-fashioned pen and paper or electronic note-taking? So the pen and the good old-fashioned pen and paper wins in this one. 70% of you still prefer good old-fashioned pen and paper. 30% of you will do some electronic note-taking. So thanks for that. Hopefully I can change your minds a bit to try this. This is a picture of my iPad, and in that I've got my stylus, which I use to write on the iPad. Then something interesting that I want to show you, it's not only the tablets that you can use. I use my smartphone for note-taking. So what actually happened, we were at an event where I was an interpreter and my pen broke. So we have this fear of the electronic and it might crash, but here I've got a pen which breaks and I can easily run out of paper as well. So I had to go and use my phone. So I used my Samsung, it's the Samsung S9, and on it, completely free, already installed, was the Samsung Notes app. And I didn't have a smart pen with me. I used my finger for this instance, just showing you how good the screen was. but it's not ideal. It is very small. It can fit in your palm. It is nice and light. I was standing as I was interpreting, so it did work, but I would prefer my tablet just because it's bigger and there's more space for note taking. So just to show you a demo, this was me interpreting.
Okay, so first let me open up my app. It's the one on Samsung Notes, as you can see. So I just want to show you an example of where I was using my phone to take some notes digitally. In this instance, I was not able to sit down. I was standing in front of my audience. So obviously the phone was very nice and compact to be able to fit into my palm. So here the app is open. Let me just select. I like to select the pencil option. I make it very nice and big. And here we go.
There's a proposal here that there must be 11 members of the board. A governance structure will be of 11 board members who will be appointed by the minister. And who are going to be corrupt-free
I just quickly want to pause here. One major criticism I have with using this Samsung Notes app, you don't have infinite scrolling. So when I finish on one page, I need to go back to the keyboard, select the new page, and then go back to pencil. After a bit of practice, you get used to it, but this is not ideal for an interpreter. It adds to the cognitive load. So this is something that can definitely be made better. Another app that's completely free for your Android, those of you who have an Android phone at home, please download this app. It's the Squid, just so you can go and practice and see what it looks like and get the feel for writing on an electronic system and see if it's something you can use that you would be comfortable with. What I like about the Squid, the writing is a lot more precise. It's darker, and then with the scrolling, instead of scrolling down, you just scroll to the right and you can add new pieces of pages as you continue, and it's very, very fast. So as you can see, it's already a little bit better than it was on the previous one that I used the Samsung Notes. So this is just me taking notes in Squid. Right, so then something else that you can use on your tablet, you've got access to online dictionaries. So right there on your tablet, you can have access to a multitude of dictionaries. You don't have to bring all of them to the booth and take up space. Some of the good ones that I know of here in South Africa is from Faros. Unfortunately, this is an Afrikaans, sorry, where you get access to about 17 dictionaries. And they've got an Afrikaans, English, Setswana, Northern Sotho, and Xhosa. So you can see some of the options you have there. Online, you also have isiZulu.net. I've not used this, but some of my colleagues have, and they have recommended that it works quite well. From the SARTI website, you also have access to this terminology, which is online. I know a lot of this was created by the Department of Arts and Culture, by them. Then for Sesotho, I know the Bukantswe version 3, which is also available online. Also haven't used it before, but got this from a couple of colleagues. So what I want to ask you now with question number 3 or number 4, do you use any electronic dictionaries? Then which dictionaries do you use? You can write the dictionary you are using in the chat. So just for this poll, do you use any electronic dictionaries? Do you use them before while you are prepping? Do you use them during? It doesn't matter. Do you use any electronic dictionaries? As that results come through, you can share it. So do you use any electronic dictionaries? Yes, 88% of us indicated yes, we do. There's 12% of us, no, we don't use any electronic dictionaries. What we also need to note here, I know especially in South Africa, there's a lot of language that do not have electronic dictionaries available. There still is a big gap and a need. Now we're moving on to TMS, Terminology Management Systems, and this is some of the dedicated software that was created for interpreters. These are just some of the apps that are available, some of the software that we have available here. So of course, the terminology management system, you can use this pre-interpreting for your preparation when you compile and build a glossary and you need to prepare. You can use it during interpreting when you are in the booth in glossary mode and you need to look up some of the terms. And then post-interpreting, fixing some of the terms, adding to it, changing. So the first one I want to talk about is Interpret Bank, which is something that I purchased using a student license. And you can build glossaries. They have term extraction. So this means you can upload certain documents. This is what I normally do. If I get documents in advance, or even if I don't, I go in search of documents online. You upload the documents and you click term extraction. Then it shows you a hit of the main terms that was used. And you can build your glossary based on that. You also have a memorization function, or you can search for terminology in the booth. Here, I just have a video. This is one of the new functions that they've added into Interpret Bank, where you use the internet and you want to create a glossary. You will see they are typing in a word, and then on the internet, they go in search of terms. I think it's a medical one, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, of course, it's going to be the most difficult word in the English language that I cannot pronounce, but you can see on your screen. So they go to the tools and they go in search of some of the terms. Insert the term that describes the topic of the glossary you want. Select the language. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of languages yet. They need to still build and adapt. You can see instantly 406 terms that they have found that you can add and build into that glossary. Then you can select or deselect those you want to use, those you don't want to use, and then you can save the terms in your glossary. Here, this is an example of where you upload your documents. You open a document, you go and you open the terminology, and it extracts the terminology. So there you can see they've got the document open, electrical discharge machining, and then it can highlight most of the words, and then you can add the words. They also have some translation options for certain languages available. I think there is for German, for Dutch, and for French. More languages, of course, we still need, but that's where we come in and where we can add to that. Then something that I need to show you here, this forms part of the artificial intelligence I was talking about, speech recognition. They built speech recognition into Interpret Bank, but they built it in to support the interpreter. So with this, they are able to identify any numbers, abbreviations, proper nouns, or certain specialized terminology. And you also have speech to text. So what you do is you feed the speaker into the Interpret Bank software, and as the speaker is speaking, they will pick up some of the terms. Here's just a quick demo.
I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen. One of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. Every week, we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are.
So now I want to show you the simultaneous interpretation where they do a live transcription of a speech, where the interpreter is able to do side translation. You can see at the bottom, unfortunately, I don't have the audio feed, but at the bottom, as he's speaking, the system is doing the transcription for you, where you as the interpreter can go back, and then you can see at the top, it has certain terminology that will be picked up, numbers and entities. So I think that's a fantastic function that Interpret Bank has brought in. Another wonderful TMS that I have is Interpreters Help. I think I'm not going to go through everything right now due to time, but you can go and have a look. It's online, so you can build your glossary online. And then something that I got used to, and this was used when I was working at University of Stellenbosch as an educational interpreter. In our team, our manager had created a WhatsApp group. So WhatsApp, it's instant messaging service, and all the interpreters were loaded onto the group. So while we were interpreting, real live interpreting, and you would get stuck on a word, instead of going to Google Translate, you type in the word into WhatsApp and you would immediately get from one of your 15 other interpreters the equivalent in your language. So here, this was in Afrikaans where I was asking, I need the Afrikaans for alternating current. And immediately one of the interpreters came through with Wisselstroom. So that's just technology that's being used in a wonderful way as well. So now we get to the last part. Can it work? Are interpreters really still hesitant in accepting technology? If so, why? Then I've recognized there's a huge gap in training. There's very little curricula, if at all, that include technology in interpreting. I just want to share a couple of links with you. So there's a book that came out by Claudio Fantinioli. He's the creator of Interpret Bank, and he has this book, Interpreting in Technology. Then there's also Tech for Word by Alexander Deysel and Josh Goldsmith, where they have a lot of webinars. They've got glossaries, tablet interpreting. Then we also have the Tech Savvy Interpreter, the column that I spoke about by Barry S. Olsen. He's actually handed it over now to Alexander and Josh, where they will be doing the Tech Savvy Interpreter 2.0. And then you can also have a look at Cultural Bridges by Maha Et Medwali. She truly is an expert when it comes to remote interpreting. So I think I can hand over now. I just wanted to check, we did all our polls. I think, did we have one more poll left? I think so. Do you build and manage your own electronic glossaries? So this can be, do you use a TMS or do you use Excel or Word? But do you build and manage your own glossaries? Okay, if we've got the poll results, we can show them on the screen. Do you build and manage your own electronic glossaries? 79% yes, 21% no. So I think at this stage I can give over. I just wanted to see in the chats if somebody mentioned any dictionaries. Luckily, I think this was available to most, but we can share it as well. I think on the Facebook page, I will share some of the excellent glossaries that people have mentioned. Right, so I think we can move over to the question and answer session. Thanks, Eleanor.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for a very enlightening, very interesting presentation. I just want to make one comment, just your interest, that Maha is actually attending this webinar. So, you know, you've spoken so nicely about her. And yes, so it's wonderful to have Maha with us. Just also the rest of our participants, we have 98 people participating on this Zoom platform, and we've got 38 people watching on the FIT Facebook page, because we had a problem live streaming to the SATI page, and I don't know exactly why this happened. So let us now move over to the questions and answers. The first one, Elizabeth, is from Christine. She says, "Dear Elizabeth, please beware, not all of the new languages recently added by Zoom work as they should." So it's more of a comment. I don't know if you want to respond to that or whether you just want to take note of that.
No, thank you for that, Christine. I think personally, we haven't used it as yet to add the new languages. I still need to train our IT team to do that, but it's good to note. And it's something that we as interpreters, when we use it, we need to give that feedback to Zoom so that they know there is a problem and that they need to adapt and change.
Okay, wonderful. Then there's a question from Jan Christoph Peltz. He says, in relation to that comment you made about the headsets being 100% protected from acoustic shock, is that indeed the case? He wants to know, is it really 100% protected from acoustic shock?
Thank you for the question. I actually did some research because we went ahead and we had to give feedback to our managers about what headset they need to buy. And this is one of the headsets that came out, that they have built in acoustic shock. I don't know if any tests have been done or if research has been done, but from my personal experience, I have had a very pleasant experience. I mean, when you interpret 8 to 12 hours a day, it does get a bit uncomfortable, but so far the sound has been excellent. And I would really tell you to go and have a look at the Parliament YouTube channel. The feedback comes from all ends and speakers speaking over each other all the time. And with that headphone, I've been able to mute very easily, and the acoustic shock has been there for my work.
Okay. Then there's Claire, who wants to know, how does the SimConsec deal with symbols in notes, and does it actually read scribbles?
So Claire, with that, I don't think so. I think you are reading back your notes, but as you are doing it, when it transfers it to typed text, I have had an experience where it will use it as an image, or it will look for a symbol that it can insert. Something that I didn't have time to insert into the webinar is another app that was created called Cleopatra, where interpreters can use this app to go and practice their own note-taking. So they can insert symbols that they can practice for note-taking, indicating this is what this symbol means. This is the symbol I will use in my own personal note-taking. And then you practice it in that app. But for the SimConsec, I think it imported as an image if it cannot find an equivalent.
Okay, Palesa Seritsani, one of the students at the University of Johannesburg, asks, what about Ochumatu? So I don't know exactly. Ochumatu is a locally produced translation memory. It's a TM. So I don't know exactly what Palesa wants to know. The question is a little bit vague. So I'm going to leave that for now. So Max de Brouwer wants to know, can you provide us with a recording of the presentation or at least a list of the useful links? So just to tell you that we will post the recording of this webinar on the South African Translators Institute's web page. And it's www.translators.org.za. So you can just find us, South African Translators Institute, under the heading webinars. We post all our webinars, and you can see the presentation there. There is Veronica who wants to know, Elizabeth, 2 questions. What again was the name of the magic pen? So can you answer that before I put the second question?
Okay. The name of the pen, it's the Echo Live Scribe pen, smart pen, and it's available on Amazon, I think, at the moment. I think Take a Lot here in South Africa also has it in stock.
Second question from Veronica is, can we have access to your slide with the remote interpreters apps names? Well, as I said, we will put this entire webinar on the SATI Facebook webpage, so you can find it there. Willem Botha asks, some organizations are hesitant to use Zoom, but prefer MS Teams, which does not have the built-in interpreter functionality. Do you have experience using MS Teams for interpreting?
So like you said, we were not able to use it for simultaneous interpreting, which was our need in Parliament. But as freelancer, I have used MS Teams for consecutive interpreting. For example, medical interpreting, where you do it consecutively and you have the screens available. So that is the experience I have. I haven't used it for simultaneous because, as you said, they don't have that feature and they cannot air out the noise.
Okay. Then we've got Alina Karakanta. We really, Elizabeth, have people from all over the globe. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I was wondering if you have any experience with simultaneous translation, automatic translation from audio in language A into running text on screen in language B. Do you think this could be a useful aid for interpreters?
So I actually do have a little bit of experience, but not enough. There's an app called Otter IE. So I actually wanted to use it for Zoom today, but I was afraid we're going to be using too much. So that's actually a live transcription software you have, where it's automatically paired with Zoom already, but you can also feed the transcriptions. So it's almost like the clip I showed you with Interpret Bank, where you have the automatic translation and the transcription happening. I do think this can be of use for interpreters if you are practiced, if it's not going to distract you, especially when it comes to numbers, proper names. We know this can ease the cognitive load of an interpreter immensely if we have that on screen, especially with numbers. I know in my language combination, the numbers are switched around completely, and it's still to this day, one of the most difficult things to interpret is the budget speech or anything financial with all of those digits.
Wonderful. So we've got Zara Claire Peacock. I wondered about Elizabeth's feelings concerning the difference between paper and technology for note-taking in terms of holding the pen. Whilst writing, you can rest your hand on the paper. So it would not be able to put this, would this not put more strain on your wrist? That's the question.
Yes, so what Zara is actually referring to, some of the older note-taking apps, obviously it was created not with an interpreter in mind, just for somebody who would be taking notes. So you cannot rest your palm as you are writing, you need to hold it in the air. But the new apps, GoodNotes, Notability, they have a feature where you can select that it will not pick up your palm. So you are able to rest your palm on the tablet and still write. It only picks up the pen.
Okay. I'm reading from the chats as well. We did ask that people should rather use the Q&A area, but I see some people ask questions in the chats as well. Elizabeth, could you give an example of in-house on-site interpreting training related to technology-supported interpreting? Could you give an example of in-house on-site interpreting training related to technologically supported interpreting? I think the question is a little bit difficult to follow. Do you have anything for me, Elizabeth? Or
well, I think if they mean in-house, it would mean that it's in the institution where they are currently working. So I think that depends. I've not been working in all institutions. And what I would prefer is knowledge sharing, because I think as interpreters who are working every day, we sit with the knowledge. And when we can do an in-house training where we share the knowledge with each other, that's how you can share. This is the technology I've used. This is the online dictionary I have access to. That's how you learn from your colleagues, because we are not all using the same things. I think on the Facebook app, we've got the interpreters practice group, and we also have an interpreter technology group where we also support each other, and that's how you learn about the different technologies and see what is available.
Okay. One question from Maha. Can you please repeat the name of that headphone again, please?
Okay, it's the Plantronics. I think it's 655DS. I can quickly jump back just to make 100% sure. Let me quickly go to that. And then I think it was on IEK's website where I read about the acoustic shock. So as you can see, it's the Plantronics headphones 655 DSP. That was the headphones I was using.
Okay, then there's a comment by Christine. I would like to recommend to all interpreters to make themselves visible when interpreting online. I can't imagine it does our profession any good if we let ourselves become black boxes. Do you want to respond to that, Elizabeth?
I think it's more of a comment, but I think that is the thing. Make us aware of what is online and learn. I mean, be a sponge, absorb, and then critique. If something doesn't work, we know it doesn't work. If it can work, then we share that knowledge with each other.
Then we've got a SATI member from Mozambique, Guijima Donaldo. I have experience using Microsoft Teams together with WhatsApp group call for simultaneous interpreting. To this end, you use Microsoft Teams for one language and WhatsApp chat for the other. It works, though it's quite complex, but it is doable. With a little practice, it actually works out fine. Thank you for such a productive webinar. So just a bit of a comment there and some feedback.
Thanks for sharing that.
I apologize. Yes, fantastic presentation. Thank you. Just a comment. This is from Willem Botha. Note-taking on the recent iPads have improved in leaps and bounds using the Apple Pencil. You want to comment on that?
No, definitely. Like I mentioned, I'm still using my iPad from about 10 years ago. So some of the features I cannot use, but with the iPad, they created the Apple iPad Pencil, which architects and graphic designers are using to draw. So, I mean, for something as simple as note-taking, it is extremely precise. And like I said, your hand can rest. It's almost better than writing on paper, I have to be honest. It's strange because everybody's so hesitant to use the technology. They're so afraid. What if it crashes? But very seldomly do we think, what if I run out of paper? What if there's no more ink in the pen? What if I lose my pen?
Maybe just the last question. I'm not sure if you will be able to answer it, Elizabeth. It comes from Daniel Arzola. Where can you find some training about technology interpreting? Do you know of online courses? Can you answer this question on a global level? Okay.
Yes. So I think one of the places that stand out at the moment is one of the links I shared, Tech for Word. So not Tech Forward, but Tech for Word by Alexander Deysel and Josh Goldsmith, where it's online based. At the moment, they're offering a lot of free webinars in this time where we have so much time available, some of us, and they're offering a couple of free webinars, and then they have specific training in technology and interpreting. I think they've got one package called the Tablet Interpreter, where they go into note-taking, the use of glossaries, the setup, and they go into very specific detail from scratch. So if you have never used any technology, I would really recommend them because they explain everything in detail.
Okay, okay. It is now 9 minutes past 2. So I think we're going to end this webinar. Elizabeth, thank you very, very much for a very enlightening, very interesting webinar. I think the participants, I've never seen so many comments and chats and a whole lot of interaction. It was wonderful to see people participating in your polls as well. And all the best of luck to you with your PhD studies.
Thank you.
Just also want to note that we've got Professor Ruslan Mitkov with us. He is from the University of Wolverhampton, where they have, where they offer the very prestigious Erasmus Mundus master's program in translation and interpreting technology, if I'm not mistaken. So welcome to you, and also thank you very much for attending our webinar. I'm going to just ask Sandra, my colleague in FIT, to just, if possible, to share the screen of our next webinar, which will take place on the 21st of October, if she is able to do it. It will be on plain language. So the title is Why the Hype About Plain Language. If you want to make a note of it and save the date, I don't think she is able to share that screen, and I'm no longer the host, so I don't think I can share it either. So
you are the host. You are the host.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have it.
Share it because I don't have the slide. That's why
I sent it to you by email, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. I'll quickly see if I can find it. But it's yeah, it's maybe going to take a while for me to find it.
I do it immediately.
No worries. No worries.
It's here.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. So you can see.
Sorry.
You can make a note of it. Why the hype about plain language? And I hope people will join us for this webinar as well. It's again free of charge in the time of lockdown and Corona. It is our way of plowing back into our industry, translation and interpreting industry. So with this, I'm saying thank you to everyone. Thank you to Elizabeth. Thank you to FIT for their support and my colleagues in the South African Translators Institute. Goodbye.